This class is database design and database structure, database design, database data structure and algorithm. Okay, we're going to be starting with introduction with what is a database. Let me just pull up the material which we are going to be using. Okay, we're going to be starting with what is a database. A database management system, or a DBMS, as the case might be. I might be using this word intermittently within the course of this lecture. So instead of saying database management system, I will be saying DBMS. So we have to understand that database is a pool of information where database management, or a database is a pool of information. It's a pool containing information of different informations. So let's now define what is a database, or what is a database management system. It refers to the technology of storing and retrieving users' data with utmost efficiency, along with appropriate security measures. Okay, before now, with this definition which we've been given, understand that before now, before the advent of modern database, we had other means which information could be stored. We had other means which information could be stored. You know that, understand that you could store, database could be as easy as filing things that belongs to you. Take for instance, as a student, you know that by the end of your study in JPTS, when you want to go for your clearance, there are informations which will be required from you so that you'll be cleared. And some of this information could be the slip, the teller to your payment, of your payment. So it will be wise of you to document this thing, to keep them in a safe file somewhere. So at the time when this will be called for, it will be easier for you to go where you have kept them to bring them out. Then other things which could be required of you could be some of your results, if you had carryover or not. So this is actually a kind of a database, because there it is, it has a document, it has a information that belongs to you at each point in time, at each interval of your study. So that is a kind of database. But with the advent of the modern database, understand that the modern database have what is called, came with what is called efficiency and appropriate security. In a situation whereby you misplace, in a situation whereby as a student, your tellers and the rest of them, if you misplace them and you don't have an extra copy, understand that it's gone forever. So, and in a situation whereby you kept it, but you didn't, you can't remember where you kept them, and when the time calls for which it will be needed and you can't locate it, it becomes an issue. Then the security aspect of it is, if natural disaster happens, it becomes a problem. if it all also goes with the natural disaster. So these are things which we have to understand. With the modern database implementation, with the advent of the modern database, these things were the things that was put into view before it came into play. So the modern database came with the technology of storing data, storing and retrieving users' data with utmost efficiency and with appropriate security. Please, we should take note of that. Okay, now why do we need to learn database? Why do we need to learn database management system? Database, we need to learn these things so that we understand that there are need for it in our traditional, in our day-to-day daily activities. Okay, we're going to be taking a brief look at the modern database characteristics. The modern days database characteristics. The first thing which we have here is the real-world entity. Real-world entity. Real-world entity. A modern database management system is more realistic and user real-time entity to design its architecture. What this play is telling you that the modern day database, which we're having now, came into view to address each individual needs. That is the real life problem. There are things which you discover now, there are things which we need to have record of, unlike before. So the modern database which we are having now took into consideration many things which perhaps we might need to start storing, we might need to start keeping. Understanding that the use for database is to store and retrieve users' information, users' data. Perhaps when we go deeper, when we begin to talk different kind of database, then you understand there are different kind of database. There are different kind of database, and you understand that of all these databases are addressing each sphere of life, each aspect of life. There are things which, apart from what the general knowledge, general things which we need to store, there are other things which there are still need for them to be stored. Then another characteristics of database is relation-based tables. Relation-based tables. Databases are made of rows and columns. Each of these rows and columns have each of them relates with each other. Take for instance, if Femi is a lady, that means Femi lady is a lady, is a female. For the role of name, we have Femi. Then for the role of sex, you have female. Meaning that each of the rows and column, either rows and column, should tally with the available data, which is given. They are relationally based. The rows and columns are relationally based. A user can understand the architecture of database by just looking at it. That means even though you don't know much about database, but looking at the database, you could know that, okay, this information belongs to this person, this information belongs to this person, this information belongs to this person. That is what is called relation-based tables. Then the second thing there is isolation of data and application. Isolation of data and application. A database system is entirely different than its data. The database is different. Why the data is different on its own? In fact, I would like to say that the database is independent of the data. The database is independent of the data. Understand that it is only when your data can only manifest itself in the database and it become meaningful. So we would like to say that the data itself is dependent on the database, but the database itself is not dependent on the data. Please try to understand these similarities. The database itself is independent of the data. Is independent of the data. That means the database can exist. The database can exist without the data. Then the next one there is less redundancy. With the advent of modern technology in database now, information less redundancy is trying to tell you that a single information can't replicate itself in multiple times. A single data or a single information would not replicate itself more than one times. That is how modern or the technology that is being involved in it. Less redundancy means that a single information can't replicate itself. With the advent of modern database, with the advent of mathematical configuration on it now, single information wouldn't replicate in itself. But most of the times you discover that for this to happen, if you need to replicate a single information, perhaps for one need or the other, the database will definitely prompt you, give you a notice that this information is already in existence. Then it is left for you to know what to do with the information or why you need to store the information more than one times. Consistency is the state where relation in database remains consistent. That means the information which you have on this database, the data which are there are always there. They are consistent. You can come up at any point in time to pull up information and it will be readily available. It will be readily available. Q language, query language. Database is made up of or is equipped with query language. One of the query language which is being used in database is called MySQL, which is structural query language. Structural query language. So that is what a database is built up with. That is what a database is built up with. So applications of database. What are the applications of database? Database is a collection of related data and data is a collection of facts and figures, information. So understand that there is a difference between your data and your information. Data are considered to be raw facts. So it is when your data is being processed. After the process of it, that is when it becomes an information. So getting of data, imputing your data in your database, as that then when you are getting this data, as that then it could be meaningless. But after the whole process, after it has entered into the database, it has been imputed into the database, there and then it becomes information. There and then it becomes meaningful. It could be easily be looked up. It could easily be looked onto and it makes sense. So there are okay, let's move to what is called the importance of database. The important characteristics and applications of database. The first one there is called first one is called acidic properties. Acidic properties, which the concept means the acidic is an acronym which stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability, normally shortened as ACID. These concepts are applied on transactions which manipulate data in a database. Acidic properties help the database stay healthy in multi-transactional environment in a case of failure. Understanding that your database, this is what is applied on your database, so that at any point in time, understanding that a database is being, depending on the kind of database, there are types of database that at each point in time, it is being accessed by millions of users. It's being accessed by millions of users. So for that database to be up and running, for that database at each point, for it to be up and running, for it to be accessible, what makes it to be accessible to millions of users at each single point is what is called acidic properties, which is called atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. This is the concept which is used for it. Then another thing which you have to know is the multi-user and concurrent access. Multi-user and concurrent access. For a database to pass the first characteristics, to pass the first requirement, the second requirement also comes into play, depending on the nature of it. Depending on the nature of it. This concept, okay, this concept supports multi-user environment and allows them to have access and manipulate data in parallel. Although there are restrictions on transaction when users attempt to handle the same data item, but users are always unaware of them. Understand there are in a database, there's what we call access permits, access control. Access control comes into play whereby users are given levels of access to information. There are some information which is specifically meant for some people. So if you are not given access to that information, know that you won't be able to have access to it. You won't be able to communicate, either read, write, or alter, or do anything with that information. So for your access control or for your access level, it is being defined by read, write, alter. Your alter means there could be delete or anything. So these are levels of access which can be granted to users. So due to our time, I will be asking, this is the time for questions. Perhaps you need more clarity on anything. It is the time for it before I give an assignment for that. Time for questions, please.
If you have any question, you can mute your mic and ask your question.
Hello?
Mute your question.
Hello? 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 Please, somebody was actually saying something. It's not clear enough. Please, can the person repeat itself, his or herself? Hello? Okay. Since there are no questions, this is the time for assignment. Please, permit me. I'm going to be calling out this assignment. I was not able to write to prepare them on the material for the presentation. Please permit me. So I will have two assignments which we'll be doing. The first one is name and explain each of the following type of database. Name and explain each of the following type of database. Centralized database, centralized database, personal database, personal database, end user database, end user database, commercial database, commercial database, no SQL database, no SQL database, no SQL database, and no SQL database, operational database, operational database, relational database, relational database, cloud database, cloud database, object-oriented database, object-oriented database, graphic database, graphic database. Then the second question is, what is database management? What is database management? What is database management? I go over it once again. The first question is, name and explain each of the following type of database. Name and explain each of the following type of database. Centralized database, centralized database, distributed database, distributed database, personal database, personal database, end user database, end user database, commercial database, commercial database, no SQL database, no SQL database, operational database, operational database, relational database, relational database, cloud database, cloud database, object-oriented database, object-oriented database, graphic database. Question 2. What is database management? What is database management? Thank you very much. The email to send this assignment should be submitted before our next class. This assignment should be submitted before our next class. The email is sharonchris29@gmail.com. 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 Sharon, SHARON, Chris, CHRIS29@gmail.com. In case of anything, please Feel free to get across to me. Feel free to get across to me on this number 08133121309. 08133121309. 08133121309. Thank you very much for your time. Please stay safe. Thank you. Have a lovely good evening.